Chapter 13, Part 1. Remember, your final essay is coming strictly out of this chapter, so look it over carefully, and I don't just mean the PowerPoint. You need to really read the text and catch more details, because I'm going to kind of gloss over. That's kind of how PowerPoints are, but just to reinforce the information. Okay? So, we're going to look at nature, knowledge, and technology. We're going to start with nature. This is a shaman's amulet here with a sea snake here with a mouth devouring a human. And art can imitate, praise, or criticize the world around us. And that world consists of animals, plants, and earth. So we're going to get into some earthworks, and we're going to get into some animal imagery. And also we're going to get into knowledge systems, technologies, and cities. It's a lot of items in this chapter. So we have a complex relationship with animals. We hunt them and we love them. We eat them, breed them, and so on. And they also have some of our aspirations and deepest fears. So we really put a lot into animals when we depict them. So the Lascaux cave drawings are among the oldest existing drawings made by humans. We know that. And just keep in mind, this was in a cave and it was well preserved, and we were able to find it. So there's a lot of exploration that still goes on today, but it doesn't mean that this is the end of exploration and we wouldn't find something older. So sometimes we do find other artworks. It's a sort of a patchwork process. We just get lucky sometimes, and we also explore known areas. So fantastic creatures is one area we're going to cover, and symbolism. And we're going to start with the ancient Greeks here, where they had a lot of things where humans and animals would connect in terms of their bodies. They would become one thing. So harpies are women-headed birds who lured men and fed on them. So a bird body with a woman's head, and maybe you've heard that term harpy. It's a bit outdated, but it would be somebody who was like constantly um, kind of chirping, that kind of thing. But a harp on to kind of keep nagging. So that is kind of, you think about that, that's a fear, right? You don't want to keep being nagged on and you feel like that person's devouring you. So that's perhaps where that came from. Centaurs are man-headed horses known for their lustfulness. I'm not sure the origins of that, but we've seen centaurs depicted in mythology. And satyrs were men with goat or horse attributes, were prone to drunkenness and sexual excess. So both of these are sort of like the animal nature of procreation, a little bit gone overboard. With satyrs, the idea of the drunkenness and the goat attributes, sometimes it has the goat horns. This is what uh, the devil was based on in terms of imagery. And you think about the crossover from the Greek and Roman mythology into Christianity, the artists that were at work at that time started to make Christian mosaics and paintings and so on. Their skill set was based on the Greek gods. So they would say, well, what if we just use this imagery that we used to have, and we'll just make that into the characters of the Bible, and we'll just keep making artwork. So they were skilled craftsmen that just continue to use some of the imagery. Like grape leaves is one, and that was for the god Bacchus, which is related to satyrs. And interestingly enough, the grape leaves became part of an image for Christ. Okay, so we have some different fantastic creatures in a variety of cultures, and we're going to get into medieval Europe here. So really our date on this is Renaissance, but we are in the Netherlands, and these tapestries take a long time to make. So this sort of look to this with no depth, no perspective into it, and this overlapping that's kind of flat. I mean, there is some value here going on, the some chiaroscuro, but not a lot. And this garden is just sort of rootless or bottomless. That is more of a Gothic sort of style. But these tapestries took many, many years, and again, perhaps the craftspeople, that's what they knew how to do, and they continued to do it well into the Renaissance. At any rate, where our focus is on the unicorn, these are at the cloisters in New York City. It's a part of the Metropolitan Museum, but it's not in the Metropolitan Museum. It's at a different location. The cloisters were I believe, belonged to the Rockefellers, and it was a medieval castle-looking building, a house that was built very, very, very large. And they decided to house all the medieval art that they had in the collection for the Metropolitan Museum up there. So it's kind of interesting when you go to that museum, if you ever get the chance, that you are in a castle looking at this work. So it has a kind of a deeper resonance. I've only been once. It was really interesting because I never would have thought to go, and a friend suggested we go there, and it really was quite remarkable. I really enjoyed it. So the unicorn is a symbol, and it was popular in medieval culture, and it has several different meanings, which we'll get into in just a second. But here we have a white horse. It's always this brilliant white horse. Likely, it was based on a narwhal that was seen in the ocean or near the shore at some point in time, and it also could have been based on a goat, because it is, this one in particular looks kind of goat-like and more horse-like down here, but goat-like with the beard. A goat that had a horn that grew strangely. Now you'd see stuff like this on the internet now, I suppose, that they're always finding animals with some kind of strange deformity or growth or something like that, but we're not sure what the origin of it is. It could have just been made up from the beginning. But he's surrounded by this paradise garden. He's got a soulful little expression. This fence that he's in, he gets there because there's several panels that tell the whole story. But right now he's chained to a pomegranate tree. So the unicorn eludes hunters, but a virgin can capture him. He'll come straight up to a young woman and put his head in her lap, and then she's able to catch him. And in this case, he's caught, right? So she's lured him in somehow. Um, and this has to do with a few different things. And one could be that Jesus is hunted by men, brutally killed, and rose back to life. So here he is chained to this tree. So that could be the symbolism there. Sorry. And the pomegranate tree, which is this here, drips red juice onto the unicorn that may symbolize Christ's sacrifice and his blood that we're used to seeing on a cross. Or it could be true love in the age of chivalry. The unicorn endures terrible ordeals to win his beloved. So the collar is the chain of love, if that makes sense. He's obedient to has mistress. All right, so we're going to get into this fantastic creature here. This is our bas relief, remember, carved low carving here. And this is Olmec. And this is basalt, which is a stone that is a volcanic stone. And it's not super soft, but it's not as hard as marble. So it's easier to carve this particular piece. And you see a lot of these type of carvings. So this is a priest making an offering, and there's a snake behind him. See, we see this giant snake, which almost looks parrot-like. They also, with the Olmec, Aztec, Mayan, we see a lot of combinations of animals. There are certain revered animals, and sometimes you see a combination thereof. So he kind of has a parrot-like head and a snake body. And the animal attributes are protecting this man, this priest, and while he's making his offering, and he's heightening his powers. So we look at these two different images. There's some similarities with the Northwest native cultures, and they're sort of overlapping or integrating all these shapes into one thing. This one, not as much so, this Olmec piece here, but some of these that we've looked at, these glyphs that we've looked at, they look very similar to the Northwestern native cultures. So our shaman's amulet depicts animal forms as a source of power and protection, and a shaman is a person with supernatural powers able to bridge the human, animal, and spirit worlds. Now the shaman is, universal to the New World native cultures, North and South America. It's native to the concept. I'm sure it's somewhat different in Africa. It's native to a lot of animistic cultures in Southeast Asia. So it's kind of a a role that a person plays that's between the nature or the animal and the human. So it's also between the spirit world. Okay, so he's able to bridge these worlds and get into certain mental states in order to um, interpret things for the humans that he lives with. So you hear about like your animal spirit or what that's become more of a term we use sort of sarcastically these days, but that is kind of one of the ceremonies people would go through in different cultures to find out what animal should guide them in their life. So this is the sea serpent here swallowing a human, and that's indicating that the shaman could operate in both the animal and human world. So he can sort of let go of his self and be absorbed into the animal world. If that makes sense. Bird is ability to fly. We see the bird here, and the bear. Sorry, bear for strength. So I'm going to end here for this video, but this is Hanuman, and he is a um, Hindu and Buddhist. So a lot of stuff that, again, somewhat similar to how religions evolve because there's already a religion that's present. Buddhism evolves out of Hinduism to some degree and uses some of the same characters. So this is an ancient story. It may even have existed before Hinduism in India originally. But this is from Thailand, and this is a monkey mask or monkey head. And the monkeys are the symbol for lust and drunkenness, kind of like the goats were in our European culture. But it shows the realistic side of humans, how you want to say, when we're aspiring to the divine. So the monkeys are sort of that darker self that is more lustful and drunken. So this is a divine monkey, Hanuman. He has white fur, which we don't see here. This is gold, but that's his depiction in paintings. And he's got jeweled teeth. He displays a crest of white hair that shines like diamonds, and all these all these outlines outline his eyes, highlight his eyes. These green uh, lines here going around. We have this red line going around the mouth, so he's snarling, and so he has and gold serpents curl at his ears. So we see that it's kind of hard to see that in there, but he's modeled from the leaf-eating langur, an actual monkey in India. So he's reportedly responsible for rescuing Rama's life. So the Ramayana is the tale of Rama, and it's a Hindu. Well, it's hard to explain. So there's kind of like how you would say mythological stories in Hinduism, and then there are the sort of beliefs, if you will. Like, here's what to do and not to do in one book. In another book, we have sort of a story about Rama and uh, Hanuman and other characters and what happens. And so it plays out the values of the culture, if that makes sense, in that text.